Jason, thank you so much for 20 years at Point Rental. So, what did you do before working here?
As far as jobs, I've had a pretty good variety.
Hmm.
Right leading up to taking this job, I was working at what is now TD Ameritrade, and I
Okay.
was doing tech support for their browser-based applications that would stream your stock quotes and allow you to make trades and that kind of
All right.
stuff.
Yeah.
And they were consistently merging companies at the time. This company called Daytech, which was a competitor of theirs prior. And so, because of that, there was not a lot of upward mobility in the technology space
Hmm.
because they were always consolidating. And they also kind of were very Omaha, Nebraska centric and
Okay.
Baltimore, Maryland centric, where they housed people. So, I looked on Career Builder
Hmm.
and saw this position at this company called Point of Rental. I came in for an interview and also the IQ test and everything. Drove through a rainstorm on a lunch hour and met Wayne, and we had a
Hmm.
great conversation. And it just seemed like, hey, there's a small company and opportunity to hopefully be able to show what I can do and have opportunity to kind of advance because visibility should be high with that like I think 9, 11 employees, something like that
Yeah.
at the time. And so that's what I did right before this, and then took it. And in my other past, I've done various jobs like welding and roofing and a lot
Oh,
of blue
okay.
collar stuff, mechanic stuff.
Trades. Yeah.
Yeah, and then slightly some teaching, substitute teaching was a
Mm-hmm.
job I held a couple times, but like elementary school
You
level.
taught elementary school people how to weld, or?
No, that was just straight up being a substitute teacher.
Oh,
So you
okay.
would get thrown into, amazingly enough, like a bilingual class, even though I had no language skills. They don't care. They just wanted a warm body. So that was
Hmm.
always an adventure, but it was cool. It was one of those things that you can definitely see how rewarding it is to be a teacher, just to kind of have that impact with young people. And, maybe one day when the rental business is done with me, I could see myself going into that. But big
Hmm.
challenge is teaching kids, I think. Just keeping them safe and sound and dealing with their own little, you're surprised sometimes what a first and second graders, their home life is like, so you kind of get a
Hmm.
taste for what life's like outside of your own house. So,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
So, I know you said you found Point of Rental just pretty much online. What was the job that you applied for? Like, what did you
Oh,
start off with?
yeah. It was basically what we would say is IT setup
Okay.
and configuration with the promise of programming. So that was the big draw for me. I was like, that's what I was in school for.
Mm.
That's what I had a passion to get into. And Wayne said, well, there'll be some chance for programming, and that was obviously extremely true.
Hmm.
But yeah, when I first came in, what I would do would facilitate if they made a sale, we would physically, purchase, unpack, assemble servers, adding RAM and disks and such.
Yeah.
Get a layout for what they were going to do, how many computers and systems they were going to have, and then like send them cables of a certain length. And actually, in the very beginning, I would actually travel, maybe up to 10 times a year on anything that had a decent amount, like multi-location or something.
Hmm.
And I would go from place to place, bridging modems, configuring routers, running cables, doing data conversion on the
Hmm.
spot to kind of get that final. I worked a lot with Earl, and so he and I kind of partnered up and hit lots of rental stores across the U.S. for maybe my first 3 years, I think. And then the world started changing to where it was not uncommon to have a local IT person do
Hmm.
that kind of a work. And so along that way, that's where the programming came in. Was like at the time we would manually connect to every customer when we would make a change or what we call a hot fix now,
Hmm.
and we'd copy and paste those things to every computer across the United States. And that was like, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
So that became what we know an elite expert as file sync. And then we were also doing a similar thing to update people's websites, and that became what we call make web,
Hmm.
automate that. And then, really those were kind of utilities. And then there was like, hey, we've got this thing we tried to make with MapPoint a while back. Why don't you take a look at that? And that became the dispatch center. And so,
Hmm.
and just kind of on the line, to all the things that we made just kind of came from a uh, problem in front of us, and, try to solve it.
Yeah, definitely. So, after 20 years, I'm assuming you're still not pulling cables and going door to door to install IT servers. So, what's your job like nowadays?
Yeah, over the years that did change where we got big enough that it wasn't just Wayne show featuring Jason a little bit to bring in other developers. And so somewhere around 2011 to 2013 or so, like we grew enough that Wayne needed to be focused on, I think in 2011 is when he bought the company. So yeah, he's focused more on CEO type stuff. And then it was like, yeah, let me kind of, run our stable of developers we were beginning to form. And of course that,
Hmm.
exploded in later years to be a lot larger. So what I do nowadays is um, minor in the programming.
Hmm.
Certainly there's some times where I jump in and do some things, but primarily I work with the product team and the rest of the R&D leads and, on the strategic side of what we're trying to accomplish and trying to grow the organization and scale ourselves so we can get out of our own way and move fast as we might have used to be able to do. And then my own team, work with them. We work pretty closely together multiple times a day. We interact and talk about what's going on with the stories that we're working on or the defects that we're solving,
Hmm.
um, strategies, testing, and you continue to evolve what we're doing as well to accomplish more and accomplish it with less defect rate and stuff like that. So yeah, mostly my job has changed to that where there's more of a interacting with the rest of the business
Hmm.
aspect and managing, but certainly and I think Wayne can attest to this, like it's fun to program because that's kind of what got
Oh
you into
yeah.
it. So I'll catch him doing the same thing, like middle of the night or something. He's working on something. So I think you can't take the dev out of the manager
Oh
yet.
yeah, sneak a couple some lines on Code Pen or something like that. Be like, what are you doing, Wayne? Nothing. Just seeing if this can just looking into something.
Exactly. And also working with the other dev teams as well. So now we have a lot of cross relationship with the mobile, the payment, the e-com,
Hmm.
essentials and Syrinx as well. And how our biggest change now is like trying to coordinate all of these things into ideally one day. What the word unified is about is like, yeah,
Hmm.
one rental management software suite platform, micro apps, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
that works together to get the best of everything because each product has its own strengths and business practices that it supports better than the other ones. But at
Hmm.
the end of the day, we're doing rentals. So yeah, but then again, it's just like saying that we speak English here and in Britain and in Australia, but you get down to it and there's a lot of subtlety that adds up to complexity, and it's trying to kind of sort that out so that we could speak quote unquote the same language
Yeah.
on the development side. Yeah.
Man, yeah, that sounds like a pretty extensive thing to manage.
There's the one thing about it, Wayne has pointed this thing to, the edge of the universe, right? So the scope is growing, the complexity is growing, but the mission of the day to day, I think, is kind of still similar. As we're always just trying to solve problems for our customers, and with a lot of the folks that we have on board that have a lot of real rental experience. I mean, I've
Hmm.
absorbed a lot over 20 years, but there's no substitute for the people that have actually been in there and the various ways that people rent. It's the same thing can be said about them as the customer's world as ours. Just because you're in rental doesn't mean you're the same as the other person. So event and
Hmm.
service and big equipment and small equipment, all that stuff, and even the specialty stuff that we deal with, some of the medical supply guys. It's There's a lot of complexity in a world that I didn't know very much about until I started working here.
Yeah.
You find this industry has just enormous depth and complexity to it that it's an interesting place to work,
Yeah. No.
solving these problems.
Yeah, 100%. I have to agree. So, what is your favorite thing about working at Point of Rental? I'm sure you've been in worked a
Yeah.
lot of different jobs and probably worked with a lot of different departments. So it might be hard to narrow it down to one, but do you have one that kind of stands out?
Well, I think that what we later, we now know as our epic core values, right? I
Hmm.
think that they were always there, right? And I think that, so I think that's the idea of being empowered. I mean, I think I felt empowered the day I started to not just sit in my little lane.
Yeah.
I would talk with Bob and Steve and Wayne and, Earl and Joe and Tom Boris that was here for a while, like the
Hmm.
trainers, and Melanie. And, there was an open thing. There was not like a hierarchy to it. And so I feel like that's still here today. I feel like hopefully all the employees realize that they could talk to any one of us about anything. And I still feel like I can talk to any other positional person, regardless of the hierarchy on the depth chart or whatever, or the
Hmm.
org chart. But yeah, that feeling that whatever you're bringing that day, like you can actually make a difference, and you shouldn't be dissuaded from having a thought or an idea in an area that's not quote unquote your job
Yeah.
title.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like our core values is definitely something that we advertise a lot internally, and is something that we follow through
Yeah,
a lot. And
I think we do.
it's definitely a touch point that a lot of people we've had on here emphasize as one of their favorite parts, especially with the empowering, being able to, expand your role to take charge of specific projects that interest you, and have growth in your career. That's a really important thing, especially nowadays.
That's exactly right. That's that. No, that's succinctly put it. That being able to contribute in various ways, and
Hmm.
regardless of what you were hired in to do. I think that's like you see that a lot of folks here. You can see the growth that comes out of that.
Yeah, definitely. So, pulling out a little bit from work related topics, what's like a hobby or an interest that you're into right now that you feel like you could talk about for hours and hours, or just something that you're like passionate about outside of work?
Well, I'm a father of three young boys,
Hmm.
3, 6, and 9, and that is mostly I guess what is taken up what would probably be hobby time, right? I'm into all kinds of stuff though. I mean,
Hmm.
one of the things I really enjoy about having the kids is as they've grown, the questions they ask and the kind of unlocking of things that I learned a long time ago, or
Hmm.
us diving into like, well, let's go research that. I'm pretty broadly interested in a lot of stuff. I think
Yeah.
as far as if I had a real hobby, that a classical hobby, it would be building things. So at
Mm.
home, I've through renovating my house and working for some friends, to help them out with some stuff.
Hmm.
I I would love to be a really amazing woodworker. And I've made some things that are pretty nice for where I'm at, but certainly there's a there's that whole 10,000 hours thing. I haven't, so to speak. I mean, I haven't spent that much time at it, so I'm not a master of any of this stuff, but I really enjoy it's the same thing that I enjoy about this job. It's like the
Hmm.
problem solving and the finished product element. So like I'm very proud of what we do on the software side when I see it and people enjoying it just as much as I'm proud of like, I made a project at home,
Hmm.
like a thing to put your tablets on and be a charging station but looks
Yeah.
kind of nice and everything. And then, being complimented on it or whatever is nice, but it served a function, and I like
Hmm.
that. And then just overall, just yeah, building things in any way that is out there. I love that creative process,
Hmm.
and whenever that is, either that's landscaping, if that's working on a car,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. I like.
Yeah, no, it's funny. A lot of developers that I've interviewed, a lot of them tend to kind of their interests fall with like DIY projects, and I
Hmm.
think there's like a real parallel between woodworking or just projects that you build at home
Yep.
as the same as thing as coding and actually developing software. Like obviously it's different skill sets, but you're still kind of literally handcrafting and forming how something works. And at the end of the day, you have a maybe if software is physical per se, but having a physical thing out there in the world where you're like, oh yeah, I made that. This is what it does. This is its purpose, and you can get a lot of satisfaction out of something. Which probably making tables and chairs may be a little less complicated than a full blown
Oh
software, but
man,
it's
they can be
still.
frustrating when you want it to be finished nice, like in your tolerances and that. And that's where
Hmm.
I'm always trying to get better to where like you're not you used to be off by an eighth, now you're off by a 16th, now you're off by a 32nd. Oh, you can't even see that anymore. Like
Hmm.
the people that can do that kind of work, I have a total huge appreciation for the people that can make something that just looks like it was machined, but it was
Yeah.
made out of wood or even metal and stuff as well. I
Hmm.
mean, that's hard. And yeah, the software thing is if you take the time to understand it does take that same exact thing it takes to make physical stuff. You have to be able
Yeah.
to visualize it. You need to be able to break it down into the components,
Hmm.
and you need to do all the little grunt work to kind of get to the place of that finished product. And so it's the same sense of satisfaction.
Yeah.
It is.
Scratches the same itch.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because most people have discounted that they could understand it, and it just seems very foreign to them. And you kind of can't. I feel you're kind of like a special ops person because you can't really talk about what you do because you're just going to bore everybody and they're going to
Hmm.
get confused with it or whatever. But it's I don't think it's as complicated as everybody makes it out to be. But that aspect of building something and seeing it to fruition and seeing the biggest thing about this company that's amazing is we're not making video games, but we have fans of our software. So I feel like as a business software, that's a pretty amazing thing to end up with people that clap for a feature that you came out with, or
Mhm.
that kind of, fawn all over the good things about the software. Um, that's something I don't think that you get in most software companies, I think, unless
No.
maybe you made games, right?
Yeah, which, I mean, to be fair, we could make some games,
Yes,
something on the
gamify
side.
the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, we'll look into that. So, let's pretend that there's a new pointer, whether they're starting in your department or somewhere else. What would be like the number one advice that you would give to them?
Yeah, I'll steal this from Bob Bugner, who recently retired from us, but worked with him a lot over the years.
Mhm.
And it's that become an expert in the thing that we do, right? And by doing that, by trying to learn it, by asking a bunch of questions, and not just kind of being like, oh, my job is to do X, Y, Z. It's like, what is the industry about? What is the software about? What do the customers like? And like, let that unlock the possibility that maybe you got hired in at um, a job that's not what you dreamed about, but you could fulfill that dream here in a different
Mhm.
way, especially now, as large as we are, multinational.
Yeah.
There's virtually no thing that someone wants to do that you couldn't apply to this company in some way.
Mhm.
And as we grow, those opportunities, even if they weren't there right now, they could make themselves there. But I look around and I see um, all of the different roles that we have and all the different amazing people that we work with. And, thinking back to working in the back of a rental store in 2003, 10 feet from the only restroom of the place.
Oh, I don't.
Crazy stuff that like that,
Ugh.
but where we came from, like, and what really, and even that's saying, like, where did Bob and Steve come from, right? I mean, they would lug around hundreds of pounds of equipment across the United States trying to sell a computer software that was a green screen to people in the days when who in the 80s was really thinking about computers outside of scientists and military and stuff.
Mhm.
And the scratching and clawing that it must have taken, number one, to run a rental store, which ironically enough was about 2 miles away from where I grew up, and we rented videos from them, and my dad probably rented a snoozer snake or something like that. Um, and then from those humble and very difficult beginnings, I mean, because by the time I got there in 2003, I mean, that's 20 years after the company was started.
True.
And Wayne had gotten there in about 93, so really it's the hard work of those guys starting out. And I guess Earl and Tom were some of the first employees of that, and then obviously transitioned eventually to Wayne. And Joe White's father was actually the first programmer. So
Mm.
you think about like what it took, all the years and struggles that it took to get to the place where when I got here, we were crossing the 500th installation or something. And of course now, I don't know what the number is. It's
I don't know.
astronomical,
Yeah.
but and then you look at all the contributions of everyone else that's been here, and some amazing people that aren't here anymore, but all the amazing people that have come in their place and they're growing today. I think it's pretty astounding to just think about a company that, yeah, it was about, even saying 11 employees when I started, that's counting at the time. The sales team was not internal. They were kind of free agents,
Mhm.
and here's a price and you can sell it for above that, was kind of how it worked. And we interacted with them at a couple of shows a year, but to where now we have an in-house multi-level sales team. But yeah, to think about how small it was and what were the chances it could turn into this. And then really, of course, the fact that when Wayne, got full control of this thing, to even then, I think we were in the 30s or something like that, employees wise. So
Mhm.
really amazing to work for somebody that's not satisfied anywhere where we are today, and maybe not satisfied even where we're, a few years from now. It's like this whole big mission that we have, even beyond rental, to impact charities and all the people around us outside of just making their business lives better. Yeah, who could have predicted any of that? And so, yeah, me taking a career builder ad and kind of wandering in here and everything to end up with this, kudos to me for knowing it was going to be like this, but I certainly didn't.
Congratulations. Good job.
And I've always appreciated everyone we've added to this company, because it's like we need everybody, because
Mhm.
it's so overwhelming sometimes to think about all the things we have to solve. But seeing everybody come in, I've always been a big fan of those people. I've never looked at it like, oh, we're diluting, whatever I might it mean to this company. Like, it's an infinite thing that we're working on. So
Yeah.
there's plenty to share, right? So
Yeah, definitely. I can couldn't agree more. So, Jason, we're at the very last question. we'll pretend that, or maybe in the future, if you become a director, you're up there on the Oscars. I think that's the Oscars one is for like directors for movies, right? Or that's the one.
Okay.
Is that
Yep.
the one with the little guy? All right,
Something like that.
all
Yeah.
right. So you're up there on the podium, and obviously 20 years is a lot of history here in the company. But if you're up there, who are you thinking?
Well, I mean, obviously Wayne for hiring me.
Hmm.
They got to start there. Bob and Steve hugely influential on my growth as far as just thinking about businesses and thinking about what it takes to make something out of it. I think you know David Jensen and I have a long history of working well together, and like what now that we have a real codified, here's a product team description and a dev team. I mean, that's what we were back then. We were the product team and the dev team, working with Wayne, obviously, but
Hmm.
um, Melanie and Holly and Joe, some of the folks that we were been here for a while, but getting to know them very well, and they've always been, uh, good friends, good
Hmm.
coworkers, and we're kind of the beginnings, I guess, of the kind of family atmosphere that we have now today. But and yeah, working Earl and I doing a lot of installs together, I learned a ton from Earl as far as how the industry works, and it really makes my job as a developer better to understand the nuances of what it's really like to run a rental store. And and there's a lot of customers too, like that going to those ARA shows and seeing people year after year. They've been influential as well. So I think just and then like to everyone else that's been hired. I mean, I've always, like I said, it's I think I get a lot of input from everybody, and I love seeing what everyone's doing, the creativity in the marketing department, obviously, and the hard work that I see out there and support. Just and I have a real soft spot for anybody who has to go on site, the implementation team like Sean
Hmm.
Conis, and it's just it's all a hard job out there, and so I really appreciate everybody doing their part to make sure that we're all here. And definitely, I wouldn't have the success I have if it wasn't for everyone else putting in
Yeah,
their part.
definitely. So, Jason, thank you again for coming in. Thank you again for the interview, and thank you again for 20 years.
Thank you.